Hello, I'm Darryl Wu, President-elect of My Sister's House Board of Directors.
And I'm Angela Lai, Advisory Member of My Sister's House, a nonprofit organization. Today, we will show aspects of healthy and unhealthy relationships, as well as raise the awareness of domestic violence in our community.
We are part of My Sister's House, a Sacramento-based nonprofit organization focusing on serving the needs of Asian and Pacific Islander women and children impacted by domestic violence. My Sister's House provides a culturally appropriate and responsive safe haven and also community services. In a continuing effort to spread the word about domestic violence prevention, My Sister's House brings you this special program.
You are watching Healthy Relationships, brought to you by the Office on Violence Against Women.
In past episodes, we have learned of spiritual, emotional, and financial abuse. We have heard of physical abuse, which inflicts pain and bodily injury on its victims. We know that any kind of abuse is a tough subject to talk about. It's harder in our Asian and Pacific Islander communities because of our culture's desire and need to save face and keep it in the family.
Today, we will be talking about the success stories at My Sister's House. We celebrate the achievements of three very unique and strong women who broke the cycle of violence. They will share their personal journey to growth and empowerment. Thank you, Priya, for coming in to share your success. Can you tell us briefly what forms of abuse you experienced in your relationship?
I had been married to my ex for almost 5-6 years, and the abuse lasted the entire time. It started off with just an isolated anger outburst at different incidents, and started off as verbal and emotional abuse. But eventually it became, control of movement, financial abuse. I couldn't use my credit cards or my own cell phone. I couldn't go meet my friends when I wanted to. I couldn't use the car when I wanted to. And I had a baby in the middle of all this, and when my daughter was about 1 year, it spiraled down into physical abuse, and it had to go really bad when both our lives were at risk for me to realize that this was not going anywhere positive.
How did you get help, and how did you connect with My Sister's House?
So my cousin introduced me to My Sister's House. She had learned about it from her colleague at a hospital, and I came and had a meeting with one of the advocates at My Sister's House. They gave me initial counseling on basically what domestic violence was, and that I should be aware of the fact that I was a domestic violence victim. And they spoke to me about the DV cycle and what could happen. I was in denial at that point, and I had a daughter, and I was very traumatized. So they helped me see through some of the next steps. Actually, the meeting with My Sister's House was very crucial, because my advocate told me that if it goes on further the way it was happening, then the Child Protective Services would take my daughter away. That was a wake-up call. Until that point, I was really not considering leaving that marriage. I just needed help handling the situation. But after speaking to the counselor, I realized I wasn't going to jeopardize my daughter's life staying in a bad relationship. So My Sister's House was very instrumental in that.
What service did you find most helpful from them?
They were great. It was very supportive to begin with, the emotional and mental support that they gave. Psychologically, to know that you're not alone, and there are other people who have been through this hell and come out the other side and are able to hold their head high and carry on with normal lives, bring a sense of normalcy to their life. That was huge. Emotionally, it was a big booster. And they have a lot of programs. They have the Women to Work program, which will teach you life skills, job skills, talk about people where there's a group of women who come from similar backgrounds and similar societal issues, talk about what they've been through, and they talk about coping strategies. So it was phenomenal from several perspectives. I got a couple of job leads. I was unemployed at that time. So My Sister's House helped me with my employment applications, with basically having a nice social framework and a network to fall back on during a very emotionally traumatic time in my life.
What are some of the key components that are helping you succeed today?
Key components. So first of all, it took me a lot longer than I thought it would to come out of this relationship, and I had to process the information about what happened in my life, and B, keep reminding myself every waking minute that I was not a victim and that I was a survivor. It was hard to get out of that mold. I kept victimizing myself, not just in that situation, but outwardly in general, with all setups, with all relationships, whether it was applying for my job or, meeting anyone socially, even having a cup of tea with a relative, because your confidence takes a beating. And in my case, I knew that my spirit was not broken, but it was definitely very bruised. So I had to work on that. And faith helped, religion helped. I knew that I was strong enough to come out of that. I had a daughter, like I mentioned. So she was very young, and I knew that I had to be a good role model for her. So I had to clean up my act and come out of it and realize that I am a great woman with a wonderful life and a career ahead of me, with or without him in my life. And my sister's house helped me instill that confidence back in me. The workshops really helped. Meeting other women, like I said, is very empowering to know that you can come out of it. And I was already farther along in the journey than so many other women were, so it was sort of rewarding to know what you can give back in terms of what you've learned in life. Yeah.
Tell us how your life is different today.
My life is wonderful. I have a very nice job so I don't have to drag my feet to work. I love going to work every morning. It's very nice. I have my own apartment. I feel like I can almost breathe. I felt very suffocated in a bad marriage, so I can breathe now, and I have a nice life to look up to.
If there is someone in an abusive relationship who is watching this episode today, what message would you like to give them now?
I want to tell them to be aware of what they think in their own minds is a bad marriage or a bad relationship. I think each of us know in our hearts instinctively whether it is going to work out or not. If you do decide that you're losing yourself or your life is at jeopardy at any point in time, especially if children are involved, please make a decision to leave that relationship and reach out for help. There is a lot of organizations outside, like my sister's house, that will give you plenty of resources on what you have to do and what you can do in a situation like that, how you can protect yourself, your children. They will give you immigration help and advice and job skills and life skills, like I mentioned. Make that choice, reach out and come out of that bad relationship and save yourself. It's not going to be easy. I felt hopeless for several years in my life, and I still feel like I am a basket case every once in a while, but I can guarantee you that the ratio of good days to bad will improve dramatically over time, and you will feel like you have your life back and are in control more than anything else.
Thank you for sharing your experiences. It is an inspiration to all of us, and we do hope that anyone who watches this show and is in need will be encouraged to call My Sister's House at 916-428-3271 and seek help.
நீங்க ஒரு மோசமான ரிலேஷன்ஷிப்ல இருந்தீங்கன்னா ப்ளீஸ் அதை விட்டு தயவு செஞ்சு வெளியில வாங்க. எஸ்பெஷலி குழந்தைங்க இன்வால்வ் ஆயிருந்தா இது நல்லதில்லை, அவங்களுக்கு நல்லதில்லை. நீங்க வெளியில வந்தீங்கன்னா உங்களை காப்பாத்துறதுக்கு, உங்களுக்கு அட்வைஸ் கொடுக்கறதுக்கு மை சிஸ்டர்ஸ் ஹவுஸ் மாதிரி நிறைய ஆர்கனைசேஷன்ஸ் இருக்கு. லோக்கலா எங்க இருக்கீங்களோ நீங்க அங்க இருக்கிற ஒரு அட்வொகேசி குரூப் இல்ல ஒரு ஷெல்டர் ஆர்கனைசேஷனுக்கு ரீச் அவுட் பண்ணி உங்க ஹெல்ப் கேட்டீங்கன்னா அவங்க அடுத்தது என்ன பண்ணணும், என்ன நிலைமையில இருக்கீங்க, வெதர் இமிகிரேஷன் சம்பந்தப்பட்டதாவோ இல்ல பினான்சியல் சம்பந்தப்பட்டதாவோ இல்ல வேலை தேவையான விஷயமோ they will give you advice. அண்ட் என்ன உங்க குழந்தைகளை காப்பாத்துறதுக்கு என்ன பண்ணணும்னு சொல்லுவாங்க. அதுக்கேற்ற மாதிரி நீங்க பண்ணி உங்க லைஃப் திருப்பி உங்க கண்ட்ரோலுக்கு கொண்டு வரலாம். அது ரொம்ப முக்கியம். உங்களை இழந்துடாதீங்க.
Thank you, Marie, for coming in today to share your success. Can you tell us briefly what forms of abuse did you experience in your relationship?
6 years ago, I actually met this guy, and I thought that it is a fulfilling relationship. However, it did not go right. There is a physical abuse. There is also emotional, and I think the hardest part is the isolation and also the threats that if I don't do what he wants me to do, that he would kill me, and so that makes me leave the house.
How did you get help? And how did you connect with My Sister's House?
Well, I ran to a friend, and she was worried about me. She thinks that I'm in that situation that I cannot handle, especially that I actually was in the couch for at least 2 months. I did not even eat. I don't want to even drink. And so she said I needed help. And so she tried to search some agencies that were able to help me. And that's when I actually landed to My Sister's House.
What services did you find most helpful from them?
My Sister's House has offered a lot of services. But 2 services that I found very interesting, and I also benefit from it. One is the shelter. I actually able to stay in a safe environment where it feels home, where I found staff like a family to me. And I also found the immigration services to be very helpful. The fact that I ran away without my papers because I feel that I don't need it, but in the other side of it, I need it in order to stay in this country, and My Sister's House has able to provide me that help, and so that is very helpful for me.
What do you feel is helping you succeed today?
The fact that My Sister's House has actually a competent staff and board members, and with the support of everybody around me, I able to succeed, and that's how I feel it's very important in any situations, especially with the domestic violence situations, to have somebody who actually can give you support, and not just support, but make you feel comfortable where you are at, and not treated you like worthless people. And My Sister's House staff did their job to be able to help me succeed now today.
Tell us how your life is different today.
My life is different today. The fact that I actually live in an environment that is free from violence. I'm glad that I overcome that. And the second part is I actually able to help others by mentoring them and try to advocate for them, not only to the women who undergo through the ways that I've been through, but also with the children. And part where I am today is actually being able to go to school and finishing up my graduate studies.
If there is someone in an abusive relationship who is watching this episode, what message would you like to give them now?
For all the ladies that is watching this program, I just want them to know that there is actually a solution to this problem. I understand it is hard, the fact that it's hard to live in a relationship that you actually wanted to build, and because there is a feeling that is involved, and also some of us has the immigration part that is involved. But I wanted them to know that there is a law that protects them. They just need to ask for help, and My Sister's House is always there to help anybody, regardless with race, age, and ethnicity. My Sister's House is always be there to help us.
Thank you, Marie, for sharing your experiences. Your story is very touching and will be a source of encouragement to others.
Sa lahat ng kababaihan na nanonood at nakikinig nitong programang ito, nais kong malaman ninyo na mayroong solusyon ang problema. Ang pang-aabuso ay hindi karapat-dapat at mayroong batas na nakakatulong sa inyo. So kung nangangailangan kayo ng tulong, tumawag kayo sa My Sister's House. Alam ko na tunay na pagpapahalaga at pagmamahal ay maialay nila sa inyo para kayong natulungan.
Thank you, Blia, for coming in today to share your success. Can you tell us briefly what forms of abuse you experienced in your relationship?
Well, it didn't automatically start with physical abuse. It slowly triggered with verbal abuse, and then he triggered into emotional abuse. And along the line of physical abuse, he also was sexually abusive to me. And not only was he abusive to me, he became very abusive with our children as well.
How did you get help? And how did you connect with My Sister's House?
When I finally sought for help and decided to get help, it was when I realized that that I, not only feared for my children's safety, I feared consistently day in and day out, and it just wasn't a living lifestyle that I wanted. I would have to, make sure all the doors are shut, and when I come home, the doors would be open, and little things like that. And it wasn't a lifestyle that I wanted for my children, for me always having to fear. And I started seeing in my children that they lived in fear. Not only did I, but my children as well. And so when my children were being hurted by him, and I realized that it's that I should not fear for my children being fatherless, but I should fear for their safety as well. I spoke with neighbors, friends, family, peers, and I finally started speaking out, and they were able to help me as well to seek for help, and CPS was also there. He was also noted that one of my child was marked from being abused by his father, and they came out and they worried me a little, and my neighbor had mentioned it as well and confirmed that Weave was a good resource. And so when I had contact Weave, they had informed me of My Sister's House, that they specifically focused in the Pacific Islanders and the Asian community. And at first I feared coming out because of the Hmong culture. I feared of of the Hmong community looking down on me, and not having a father figure around my children.
What are some of the key components that are helping you succeed today?
Well, breaking culture barriers seems to be an ongoing thing at the moment. There was culture stigmas, and it was hard for me because I was always told by my ex that if you leave me, the culture would always look down on you. And I did fear that. The culture would look down on divorced women, but not all. And so I had it in my mind that if I did leave him, I would no longer have any friends to associate with, that he was my only friend, and that, being a divorced woman, everybody would fear me because of maybe, interacting with other men or interacting with other people who are still married. They feared. And so because of that, I feared of, because of the culture barriers, it was really hard for me to come out and to look for help or to seek help from friends and to, give them my thoughts and to let others know what was going on in my own home. And so the hardest was when I did leave after seeking for help. But with the support of neighbors, friends, family, advocates, I was able to process some of the issues and put them behind me and not be discouraged of having to move forward as a single mom to 4 children.
Tell us how your life is different today.
Well, at the moment, I feel confident, and I feel that I'm on my way. I'm on my way on this road into being independent, and I'm able to pursue forward into my dream. And I've always had a dream of returning back to school and returning to get my certificate in the medical field. And I'm confident that I'll be there soon. Yeah.
If there is someone in an abusive relationship who is watching this episode today, what message would you like to give them now?
As a survivor, as a sister, to someone out there that is probably watching this show or watching, or listening to me, I would have to advise you to do come forward. Do not fear that no one out there can relate to you. No one out there can understand you. Don't isolate yourself because you've been isolated long enough. And do seek for help. There are so many things out there. Life continues outside of your room, outside of your house, outside of your yard. And do seek for help. There's someone out there who would listen. It may be your friend, your neighbor, your family. They're out there waiting to help.
Thank you for sharing your experiences. It is an inspiration to all of us. When we come back, we shall seek the advice from a health professional with experience in working with survivors of domestic violence.
教viên有我都会当年我都做才的了，一路呢我专业课我用去啥的，用在么都有都了错。用去啥的有么给新都是假是给，我有那找到给我有啥的有春天东家给巴，冷天给巴，只都有都看书了以后有路可过。กูว่าที่จะเสียแต่เรื่องที่我น้องกูจะรู้เนาะเรา有么路เสียเทียเรา么จะกินชาย我ก่อนเลยสัญญา么จะกิน就เสียเราจะกินชายวันน้อยนู่นถอยนู่นไอ้จิอยู่ชายเตี้ยอยู่ชายจะเสียก็อยู่น้อยสิ่งรู้กูว่าที่จะเสียเตียเนี่ยน้องกูจะรู้เนาะเทียเนี่ยเชิงขาเนี่ยก็เนี่ยแต่ของเนี่ยรู้ห้อง我จะจองดู但是呢，你有些黑天你做黑，你去把这个家，但是头你拆了了，一弄头一弄日日，你要把这个家天，你要把这个外面，你要把你路好片，你要把你的路那你喏，你梦都差，你路那你我就做，但是呢你喏。
I sat down with Dr. Maura Sharma, a psychologist who has expertise in domestic violence. She currently works for Kaiser Permanente at the Outpatient Psychiatry Department in South Sacramento. Dr. Sharma, we just heard success stories from 3 survivors. Please tell us, how unique are their stories, and how does one continue to be in a violent-free environment and maintain healthy relationships?
My sister's house is very fortunate to be able to celebrate the strength of these women and the many others who will relate to their stories. As you've heard from both Priya and Marie, their stories are different and their path to success is different, as the path to success would differ for anybody. Each survivor works with their case manager very closely, they set achievable goals and work at their own pace. Personal safety would be the first goal to anyone who is struggling with or has been affected by domestic violence or abuse. Safety of the children is also of the utmost importance, as you want them to grow into independent and confident people who break the cycle of violence and contribute to society in a positive manner. Success is not about wealth, it's about achieving your personal goals and being safe. Each success story is very different and each one is valuable and has so much for us to learn from.
Can you share with us some healthy tips to a relationship?
So in an unhealthy relationship, a relationship where there's abuse, there's always differences in power and respect. So the abuser's usually up here, and the way that they regard the survivor or the victim is down here. So they're always talking to the other person from this position. In a healthy relationship, is like this. So both parties have equal value, equal say-so, equal respect, and you really want to see these values of respect in the relationship. So you'll see people working together to work towards mutually satisfying resolutions to conflict, people sharing economic partnership and responsibilities as it relates to parenting and running the entire household. Then you'll also see support in one another's aspirations, goals, and interests. You'll see that they want them to be connected to family and friends and other people that are important to them. And then there's trust, and trust can take quite some time to build, and it should, because it's that important of an issue. But when there is trust, people will be able to admit that they've done things wrong, and then again come together and work through their differences so that everyone's happy. So again, a lot of issues and dynamics that you'll see in healthy relationships really support people being on equal footing, and that's one of the most important root values in keeping and sustaining a healthy relationship.
Do you have any last encouraging words for our viewers?
You know, most survivors in Asian Pacific Islander communities are isolated, and they're too reluctant to walk out of a bad relationship for a number of barriers and cultural reasons that make it difficult. Our hope is that in listening to Priya, Marie, and Plia, and others, that if you're in a situation that's similar, you'll have the courage to take the step, call, and seek out information about possible options that may be available to you. If you or a relative or you have a friend or a neighbor that you're concerned about, please be sure to tell them to call My Sister's House. The number is 916-428-3271.
Thank you, Dr. Sharma.
We'd especially like to thank today's guests, Priya, Marie, Leah, and Dr. Sharma. Also, we would like to give a special thank you to the Office on Violence Against Women for making this episode possible, and to the Crossing staff for the technical assistance. For more information on My Sister's House and the services, please call 916-428-3271. This is a multilingual line. If you speak a different language, please let them know your telephone number and the language you speak. 如果你需要更加多有關 My Sister's House 服務嘅資料，請打電話916-428-3271。呢個係一個多語言嘅熱線電話。如果你唔係講英文嘅，請你留低你嘅電話號碼同埋你所講嘅語言。
That's all for today's episode on healthy relationships.
On behalf of My Sister's House, thank you for watching.